Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am the one and only MSJ, Max for short, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my first ever GoodReads challenge. I had set two goals for the year of 2019. One is to watch 150 new movies, which I will talk about in January of 2020. I'm going to create a whole series of videos for that, to talk about that goal. And my second goal was to read 10 books. I love to read. There's just no doubt about it. That's one of my favorite things to do next to watching movies. And I recently got an app on my phone for GoodReads, and it's a great app to keep track of books that you've read, books that you want to read, and books that you are currently reading. And it helps you kind of keep progress, like can show you the percentage of how far you are into the book and stuff like that, which is a good motivator, to be honest with you. Seeing like, oh, I'm like 30% into the book, and I'm like, oh man, I would like to get to maybe 40% before the end of the day or something like that. It's a really cool motivator, and they have groups on there for people who read the similar books and stuff like that, which is just like, it's a fantastic app. I haven't really broke the surface on it all. I'm just barely using that, mainly to kind of just keep tabs on my world of things before I kind of really dive deep into everything on there. So I'm going to be talking about the 10 books that I had accomplished reading in 2019. There's a little bit of a theme. I did not plan to read any of these books except for one. There's one book that really kind of was a must for this year, because I had read the two previous books in the series, and I was just like, I really need to finish this one because I fully enjoyed the first two, and I kind of have some feelings about the third installment, so I'll get to that. My first book that I completed for my GoodReads challenge is Forever Nerdy by Brian Posehn. He is a stand-up comedian. He has a very, very recognizable voice, and like his stand-up material tends to lead on the nerdy side of things, and even in this book it does as well. And that's why I tend to like him a lot, and I think he's one of my personal favorites, just because he's different, and that's what makes him really stand out. He's like really tall, and he just I don't know. I can't really describe him without actually. If you know who this guy is, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this book was so much fun to read. Just him talking about his family and the stuff that he thinks is nerdy to him, and his takes on Star Wars and various Kiss albums and just stuff like that. I just find so fascinating, just kind of hearing people talk about that kind of stuff. And this book is actually the start of a trend that I didn't realize I was going to be doing for this challenge, was to just read nonfiction books. I have a few fiction books in there as well, but this year I actually tend to read books that was written by the person who wrote the book, and not necessarily autobiographies. It's just like them, maybe a collection of essays, or just kind of, one is, I think, technically an autobiography, but I think this one is too. But it was just a nice collection of him just talking about where he came from, and I really truly enjoyed that a lot. So, and I read this book in his voice, because like I said, he has a very distinct voice, and I kind of read it in that voice, and there are some points where you can kind of like hear him, in my mind at least, kind of like raise his voice and stuff like that, because when he does, it's very, very distinct. So this is probably leaning towards the top of the books that my favorite books of the year that I've read. So book number one. Book number two is End of Watch by Stephen King. This is the third and final book in the Bill Hodges trilogy, and this is probably the most polarizing one of the books I've read this year, because I fully enjoyed the first two installments, which was Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keepers. I loved those two books. I thought those were like really good detective stories. They were like, I really could not put those down. I read a lot of Stephen King, and those two were really top tier in my opinion. I really like when he doesn't have the super. Some of my favorites are when he doesn't have the supernatural element to it. A lot of them do, but I was like, I haven't read a non kind of horror Stephen King book in a while. And reading Mr. Mercedes and Finders Keeper was more detective stories, and I just loved those two. Now, when it comes to End of Watch, I was really torn because there is a supernatural element to it that was not present in the first two installments, and I disliked that. I absolutely did, because the first two were grounded in reality, and I wanted to keep this in the same plane of existence. Like I wanted, like, whatever was happening in the first two books was still kept a consistent tone with this one. I mean, I don't mind. There's some characters that kind of come back from the past to kind of like, hey, like whatever happened in the two previous books aren't going to go away, and I still like that aspect of it all, but kind of making it kind of have like a supernatural element to it. It kind of took it away from me. Even though I still enjoyed the book overall, but I still was just kind of not too enthused by that part of the storytelling device. I rather have like maybe, I don't know. I'm still not quite sure what could make this book better or worse. But I still enjoyed it. But I still think it was a nice end to the Bill Hodges trilogy. But I just wish that little bit of thing, which was such a major part of the book, was not part of it. But just overall, I still enjoyed it. It's still good. It is still good storytelling, regardless. And just that bit of supernatural touch to it kind of took me away a little bit from what made the first two installments so good to me. So that's book number 2. Book number 3 is probably the most meaningful one on my list. This is No is a 4-letter word by Chris Jericho, who is a wrestler. He's one of my all-time favorites. This is my first book I'm able to read written by him. I still need to read his previous 3. My girlfriend got me this book on Easter. Now, the reason why this book means a lot to me is because I had just gotten home from work. It was a good day at work, and I got a call from my dad telling me that my grandpa has passed away, and I was devastated. There was like no better way of describing that. So there was just nothing. I was heartbroken, just everything. And my girlfriend had this sitting on the table. I didn't even see it. So after I had finally kind of gotten over the initial shock of it all, I was kind of walking around the house, and she told me that there's something on the table. And I saw this. And so over the course of the next few days of dealing with his funeral and stuff like that, and just kind of like, he's not here no more, I was reading this book, and it kind of kept my spirits up. So it's just him talking about his various backstage encounters and like his various wrestling matches and stuff like that. I really like this because it's just kind of, he pulls no punches. He will tell you how it is and how the inner workings of things, and that was just the perfect escape that I was needing for these handful of few days. I kind of made this one drag out. This is not a very big book, but I made it kind of last a few days to kind of help me get through what had just transpired. So I know Chris Jericho will never see this, but thank you. This book helped me get through a really rough time. Um, it's very meaningful to me. Um, it's a good book, and this is probably my favorite book of the year just because of that reason. So, um, thank you, and to my girlfriend who bought me this, not knowing what had just happened, but that it helped me tremendously to get through those few days. So, uh, book number 4 for my Goodreads challenge is Casino Royale by Ian Fleming, the first in the 007 books. And I really been wanting to read something more espionage, spy thriller, and stuff like that. And I am a big fan of James Bond. But I just have never really felt an interest in reading the books because I'm more of a movie guy. But I was at this really cool used bookstore down in Nashville, and I seen a good collection of all these books, and I'm like, oh, I really like these covers, and I'm like, oh, I will take a chance. I wanted to read the James Bond books, at least the initial Ian Fleming ones, and I read the first one, and it was okay. I liked it. Basically was very close to the movie because I was kind of seeing the things that was happening in the movie, in the book, kind of through like the Daniel Craig's version of the James Bond, and it kind of helped kind of coincide with the book. And even though there's a few major differences, like the game isn't different, like it's Baccarat in the book, and it's poker in the movie. But just overall, I think this book was fun. I don't normally tend to read spy books, but this one, it was a lot of fun. But it was just okay overall. I mean, hopefully when I start reading the next handful of Ian Fleming's James Bond books, they'll get better. But this one didn't put me away. It didn't like tear me away from reading any more of them. So I'm actually looking forward to kind of reading them, and that's actually maybe my series for 2020 is to finish the James Bond first run of the James Bond books.